Turns out he's a major cinephile. They don't watch enough movies! It's a very simple formula! And here we go. Well, this is a bit late to the party, but hopefully you've been checking out the list and checking it twice of Freeform's 25 Days of Christmas Marathon on the show's social pages, as it's finally time to get us into the festive film fun together. Hopefully y'all have been doing this on your own as well, and while there are some omissions from this year's marathon, there have been a good listing here, as usual, and I've been breaking down some of the favorites and classics on this list. Some I'm watching for the first time, like both of the most recent Grinch films. I know that sounds weird, but I swear I hadn't seen the full one from 2000 either. It's wild. But my hope is to bring some joy and gifts to close out this brutal year. It's my namesake after all. So grab that cocoa, get the coziest blanket in your house, and listen up to the first of these heartwarming holiday episodes. And away we go. So I can't say I'm one of the people who actually grew up with the 2000 version of The Grinch, but Jim Carrey perfectly cast in this. His over-the-top acting as one of the weirder Batmans maybe was a little too much, but here, excellent. He may also be the best part of Kick-Ass 2. Everything here looks amazing. The setting, the makeup, the costumes, easily the best live-action Dr. Seuss adaptation. I know there's not many, but The Cat in the Hat is something weird, but immediately this movie gets you into the Christmas spirit. When the film just kicks right off, what's immediately chill, awesome, super cool, besides of course the fact that Sir Anthony Hopkins is the narrator, is that just like Jim Carrey, equally weird and over the top, just like his Arrested Development character, Jeffrey Tambor, is in this. Unlike the book and the cartoon, the original cartoon, they flesh this out a bit more. 26 minutes versus 1 hour and 44 minutes. And there's kind of a stance here on how Christmas and this time of year makes everyone a bit materialistic and how everyone has to be on all the time. Especially now. No one can be happy all the time. Holidays, they're a bit of a bummer. And instead of just having to feign happiness and be called a Grinch for not immediately being in the spirit, this movie goes into that a bit. No unilateral mandated happiness by the end of the movie either. Besides flushing out the Grinch, they do way more for Cindy Lou Who. Also, as far as dogs and movies go, Max is sensational and adorable in live action, because it's just a real life dog, not some animated dog. I think making the competition of the best decorated house something that is super a thing in some crazier places of the world these days, but having a outside lighting house Gatling gun to set up all your decorations, amazing. These little attention to detail moments really making the Who festive world spectacular and over the top and zany, phenomenal. And I also need one of these yesterday. Like, get me that lighting Gatling gun. Would be an absolute festive treat to have one of those. Actually, the Grinch growing up story, since we do get to see some backstory, super sad. He puts himself out there and gets into the season despite being so different and having a tough upbringing. He was bullied by tons of jerks, and that all shaped him to be who he is. This is kind of my story with things like this. Yo, there are some amazing messages here in this very weird looking movie. But it's way deeper than anyone is probably giving it credit for, myself included. There is something amazing about the Grinch having scheduled times for wrestling with his self-loathing. I mean, that's too real, really, right there. This is actually really nice compared to the original one, and that's a classic, which, don't get me wrong, is great in its own right. But telling me why the Grinch became who the Grinch was, and how he was not just rotten because he was born evil, there's something nice about his Grinchness being caused by not only society, but specifically the mad, corrupt mayor in this. One negative, maybe this is because the original song, You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch, is perfect, sang by Thrall Ravenscroft, but this version here does not slap. The one in the movie with the time of being doing all the Grinch prep stuff, not great at all. But the credits have the remix version with Busta Rhyme. Yeah, that song, that does slap. It's fire, belongs on the hip-hop Christmas playlist, the best type of Christmas music. The scenes that are more classic from the book and TV special are nice and fun, and man does Jim Carrey have a great time in this role. And the lines and special effects are the right kind of cheesy humor for a movie like this. But under all that is a really sweet, wholesome tale that helps for those who need something that isn't necessarily just rah-rah, be in the Christmas spirit, rah-rah, but it's still very festive. So, The Santa Claus has to be one of the best Christmas films of all time, and I will go out into the frigid western Massachusetts weather and have a snowball fight with anyone who says otherwise. The Santa Claus is everything you could want in a classic Christmas film. Slightly weird and cheesy special effects, Santa being murdered. Wait, what? Yeah, that is like one of the biggest, earliest moments in this movie. Tim Allen accidentally causes Santa Claus to fall off a roof and die, ergo bringing forth the Santa Claus. Wild that this is not only in a Disney movie, but not like some controversial thing. But then again, these are the same people that killed Bambi's mom, so potato, potato, right? So what goes on here? Well, you put on the suit and you are Santa. It's a fun, interesting concept to think not one person is Santa, but it's a job that shifts between person to person. There's this rumor, conspiracy theory, whatever you want to call it, that James Bond isn't a name, but a codename, so they can have many different agents be James Bond, even though they're not actually named James Bond. That's just another 007 thing, maybe a added on part of the code name. The special effects of him being Santa are a bit silly, but by no means are they distracting. And I feel like just really having a nice lived-in North Pole, you feel like those special effects of the more Christmas-related parts and less those too specific Santa things. It is good enough. I feel like this movie makes you think really hard about the true meaning of Christmas. Yes, the story beats of a business guy who has to understand the meaning of family and Christmas is the entire plot of every Hallmark movie. Heck, part of that even sounds like Elf a little bit. But it's clearly better than the Hallmark movies. Nothing's better than Elf, but clearly better than the Hallmark movies' version of this same plot. And something here that is so much better than the other two, Tim Allen's son is young enough and into the spirit enough to make a really wide-eyed, happy seasonal film that you buy into the music. There's not much more to it. And when I'm talking about the other Santa things, other Santa Claus movies, I'm talking about how bad the 2 and 3 films in this trilogy are. And we'll get to those, but I just want to preface that. I think I'm just saying it thinking everyone knows how bad those movies are, but we'll get there. Let's enjoy what the first one is before we destroy the other two. They have to save another business dad. Look, Elf does this too. These are all similar plot points that happens. But the way these two set up how we get there is fun. And it's festive and different enough. Once again, how many holiday movies kill off a Santa? Let's not forget that part, apparently. The build-up here is, I think, grossly underrated. Tim Allen's cooking issues and having to go to a Denny's restaurant will always be one of my most memorable moments in this movie when I think about the movie, even though it's super innocuous. The business presentation with tank riding Santa storyboard, think of this as the inspiration for Mad Men, an ode to corporate America. It's just like a scene that has Don Draper in it, just slightly more yelling in this one, I think. I can't believe I didn't say it at all. It took this long to get there. Bernard, who's the head elf, amazing in this movie. And not being in the third one, or actually they really try to quickly pass off that Judy, the elf from the first one who gives him the hot cocoa, is some other similar looking-ish elf, but not the same one. Wild and not good Not good at all to me for continuity purposes. There's a lot of reasons I will preach the idea, we'll call it, of watching the first Santa Claus and not really getting too into the other two. So the one thing I don't really get is how when a new Santa Claus is at the North Pole, the elves are like super cool and chill about it. They don't even think about the previous Santa who was, in this case, murdered, and now this unvetted person is the new Santa. A huge position of power. And one kid even brings it up at the Bring Your Parents to Work Day. If I want to be Santa, all I have to do is push you off a roof, which seemingly is the case. Or you just have to be around Santa when he dies and be the first one to jump on that coat, like a bad Black Friday of consumerism craziness. Whoever's the first one to put that thing on is a Santa. And they do briefly touch on this, not in a real exciting way, but briefly in the third movie of the Santa Claus franchise, which gives it a little credence. But the first movie brought up an issue that kind of sticks with the franchise as it's more developed and the time is thought about what happened to all these missing people. And there are some sad moments with the tough parent life that Charlie has to deal with, and they don't have the best therapy portrayal with Neil, and when he loses visitation, like, that's a tough moment for sure. But all the best Christmas movies have to be sad for a bit, for the eventual glow up and happy turn for the happily ever after at the end. Also, the best Christmas movies are the ones with weird, quirky details. The hot cocoa dispenser in the sleigh as a CD instead of a compact disc player, and it dispenses cookies. What an invention that Insomnia Cookies should partner with. We need to have this device now. Elon Musk, you know what you gotta do. Get on it. Make this a thing. And apparently, Santa's Getting Arrested is a big holiday movie trend. Here, Christmas Chronicle, Grandma Got Run Over by a Reindeer, and A Nightmare. It's a little worse for Jack Skellington when the army has to get involved, but clearly in modern-ish movies, Santas don't necessarily have the best rapport with law enforcement. Even Elf has that actually too. Gosh, what a film, Elf. Speaking of elves, the elves breaking into the jail scene with their little jetpacks and using tinsel to burn through the jail bars. So many good moments I remember to this day from the first one. There's a reason I think this is one of the yearly watches that you gotta do. I know the old classics exist, and they're great in their own right, especially for the time. But for me, this will always be my first exciting Christmas movie that I can remember from the earliest times. That wasn't, really short animation or, just too kind of cheesy or just old. Like, Jaws is too old if you watch it nowadays. It's not going to be as scary. In the same way that Miracle on 34th Street may not have the same zip as it did when it came out. Sorry, that's what it is. Also, don't want to be a downer here, doubling down on the downerisms. But is it problematic a ton of people know who Santa is? Never thought of Santa Claus as a secret identity or having, an alter ego. But here we are with this new wrinkle in Santa lore. So this should probably not come as a surprise to anyone here. Some may not even know there are 3 movies in the franchise, but there are some bad sequels in just the world of cinema. And the Santa Claus 2, no different, no surprise. There's a reason we don't talk about these normally. Now, I'm a big franchise completionist fan, so while I will not say you have to skip these, you are very fine watching the first one, enjoying it as a standalone movie, assuming the story ends when the first one ends, skipping whatever these two are. The good thing about these is at least they have most of the main cast involved in all 3 films. Sadly, this is the last film where standout head elf Bernard is involved. I mean, pretty much everyone is back in the second movie, and most of those people are in the third, which continuity-wise is good, but the praise ends here, for the most part. So the new thing, Santa needs to find a Mrs. Claus, which makes you wonder what happened to the previous one when this one led to her husband's murder. Too many questions being brought up by this new rule. And I know not kids aren't thinking these things, maybe. But if you watch these, those are questions that get brought up, and you kind of have to wonder how it happened. So the movie starts rather fun enough with ElfCom 1 instead of DEFCON 1, but there's some bad special effects and things being just a bit too dumb funny. Not that the first one was some dark Santa origin story that had a heavy Krampus hand in it, but this is like kind of dumb and with some useless, gross reindeer jokes and just some weird humor. The Council of Magical Creatures otherwise is okay, like a little worse than Nightmare Before Christmas, and they put a lot of script time into this new techie elf who is not amazing at his job. Like, they have moments of excitement here, but it feels like there's a lot of bad that clouds it. But I'm blown away at one of the worst things for me, and I feel like maybe just because early, is how bad they made the reindeer here. Like, to have semi-cartoony, almost human faces. In the first one, they were just reindeer who had little personalities. Here, they like are making jokes and saying words. Like, it's stupid, awful, absolutely hate it. They made a terrible decision to include these with special effects. You know what else is bad? The whole fake plastic Santa clone storyline. He looks bad. There's nothing that is salvageable here with fake Santa. And I know that's the joke, he's supposed to look bad, but there's bad in the movie and just useless in the overall grand scheme of the movie watching. Also, they like bringing back his bad attitude towards Neil trying to help in therapy. It feels like a story and development regression, I would have to say. The plot of Charlie being kind of scummy and acting out is like a good thing in theory, but just comes off as weird and loses the magic of Christmas, specifically Charlie not really being involved in that. And it's not great seeing him being disillusioned by it all when we're just acting up. I mean, it takes a while to figure out what the issue is, but and it doesn't really feel like it's a payoff when they do eventually say what it is. Same as the main plot point. The Santa Claus, Mrs. Claus, that legal pun will never get old. And the idea of him finding a Mrs. Claus is once again, it's a great, unique concept, but the same issue as before. What happened to the previous Mrs. Claus? Did she just disappear into nothing, like the deceased Santa? I have so many questions that existed in the first one, but they are way more pronounced on the second one, and a bit too unavoidable and tough to explain. Also, Lucy is a great side ad for a new kid, but it kind of feels like they're just trying to fill a void for Charlie being older and not wanting to use his character really anymore, which clearly is the case when you get to the third movie. So I will have to say, the casting for the eventual Mrs. Claus as a seemingly no-nonsense principal was actually very nice. I was going to say it feels like an unexplained turn, but there's actually some nice deeper development as the movie goes on as to why she does not love Christmas, and now with a tough parental upbringing, it's justifiable and understandable, not unlike some of the Grinch development that happened in some of the more flushed out films. But this is a small fleeting moment, which should have been a focus of the movie, but instead we have dumb reindeer and plastic fake Santa. And I get those are the things that tie you back to the North Pole and the Christmas magic, but it's just not doing it like the first movies did. Their take on a bad holiday party. Love it being boring and no one really knowing what to do. I've been to some nice ones, but the sheer awkward forcefulness is a special kind of poignant. And even in this moment between him trying to romance the eventual Mrs. Claus and this party, I mean, he's using all the Christmas magic that he's not supposed to use, but he's definitely doing some stuff to liven things up, and he makes the party good with all these nostalgia toys. Like, that scene is probably the best scene in the whole movie, easily. There's magic, and there's nice things that, even with his storyline with his son, that help flesh out those issues. And those things are all good, but there's so much of a gap between these things. Like, it felt like you could have pulled out some elements when they were storyboarding this and keep some of those really nice human moments and keeping the magic there, but a little understated. You know, it just feels like some of the things were forced. You know, it would have been nice to have a little more interaction of why his son is acting up the way he was. It would have been nice to have a little more development on the Mrs. Claus love storyline, even though I thought it was pretty good. I don't know. It's just half a good movie. I think that's the best way to describe it. Part of it's good, part of it's bad, but you know what they did crush? Naming Mrs. Claus Carol. Top-notch Carol Claus. Not unlike Scott Calvin being his name, the same initials as Santa Claus. Those little writer moments, very good. Very good, the Santa Claus. The Santa Claus 3, The Escape Clause. No Bernard, 0 stars. I must have seen this movie before, but a few minutes into watching it, it feels like I didn't remember any of it. This movie, like the second one, just awful stupid humor. The kind of humor that was rampant in movies in the mid-2000s. Like a bad version of slapstick humor and like dad jokes like flying a mile a minute, but not so bad that they're good or genuinely funny. Just like a groan and that's it. And yeah, Curtis being a part of the second movie was fine, but more so let's say it was okay. But he is way more involved and important in this movie for being a whatever character to begin with. And they never explain where Bernard is. Like, we know he was filming something else, but I think maybe he did the right move getting out of this movie, because after the first one they just were kind of bad. Also, just more logistic questions that pop up the longer this franchise grows, like a loose string on a Christmas sweater that is only mad noticeable if you pull it and keep pulling on it. The longer it happens, eventually you're gonna have a pile of yarn. Why does his physique and hair change as he becomes Santa, but nothing changes with Mrs. Claus? And the question of what happened to previous Mrs. Claus is a part of it now. What would happen to their kid if this Santa got pushed off a roof? Does he disappear and die along with the whole previous Santa lineage? Does the whole family disappear? Do they return to some point in time where their memories of Santa are wiped and it's like a public service and you go back to living your normal life until you die of natural causes? What about all those who were their family in a previous life? Like I said, you don't think about it when it was just a self-contained and a nice family movie with some festive magic. These sequel things just run wild and make you wonder these things. The more you think about it, the worse it gets. So far, the best part of this movie is a fireplace of just his face, with his mouth having the fire. Amazing. I think the set design is probably the best part of this movie when you think of a consistency standpoint for the franchise. Everything always looks good, not special effect wise, because the special effects include some bad flying and some bad reindeer stuff, but set design wise and costume design on point. I really did think that Plastic Santas and Jack Frost were all one main terrible thing in the same movie, but apparently it was spread out among two terrible movies instead of just one horrendous movie. How about that? And it's weird to think about it, but the reindeer somehow feel even worse than they did in the second one. They were quite bad in the second, but somehow they're just worse here. They're more semi-human, and there's more lowbrow, useless humor. Actually, I always wondered, I'm not going to look it up, but the laugh of like the Chet reindeer, of course they named a reindeer something that wasn't a reindeer name, kind of sounds like the laugh from Rugrats with Phil and Lil. I'm curious if that's true, and maybe I'll check it after I'm done recording this, but the name and the voice eluded me until I sat down to say the word, so interesting to think about. But they were like real animals in the first movie with some nice moments, and now they're just a useless joke of this movie that's just a like pale whimpering end to this trilogy that maybe could have been better. I don't know, maybe they should just stop at one. As awful as this movie is, they do have a ton of the original cast back, and even though there is some garbage afoot and retreaded story plots for the original also bad second movie, Martin Short, nice ad. Alan Arkin is good too, But even with all these new characters, and there's not a ton, they really did decide to replace Charlie. The whole family, minus him, gets to go to the North Pole, which is fine. Everyone should get to go, and I like that portion. But Charlie just hanging out by himself. We don't know if he's in college, what age he is. It just feels like something's wrong here when he's the only one that doesn't get to go back. And this whole thing of not putting him in the North Pole but everyone else, especially when he was your first window into the magic festive world, like they're clearly putting Lucy in the spot as his kid replacement. Seeing Neil interact with the North Pole, probably the best thing from the growth of these movies. But I don't get why they had to make fun of his psychiatric work all the time. And there's some yoga stuff, like, bugger off to the rest of the cast and the writing people. And it's not the cast's fault, but the characters more so. I feel like the conflict of Jack Frost, I get how his evil plan of becoming Santa is a thing, but you have to think someone would have caught him mucking around and sabotaging everything. All it took was one bad word, seemingly, and he was gone. And if everything is freezing over and it feels like there's only one person to blame, if everything was fine until this one thing happened, writing's on the wall kind of thing, right? But one good thing, what is a cocacino? I know there's mochachinos and frappuccinos, but something about just the word cocacino sounds delightful. And the recipes having Baileys and shaved chocolate, it sounds delightful. Right up my alley, even. I don't know why this is a thing, though. The amount of dumb sound effects in this movie rivals even the worst Halloween movie. Now, that one might be worse because a Halloween movie about a serial killer should not have dumb, cartoony sound effects. And yeah, it makes a little more sense for a Disney Christmas movie to have them, but it's bad in both. That was the immediate thought I had watching this, was just like the stupid bum 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 cop sounds in that awful Halloween movie. Halloween 5, for reference, is the one that's the bad one, the real bad one. The magic and family story is what this whole trilogy and was at the heart and soul of the first movie. Is why it was so good. And the second, had some of those moments, like I said, half good. It's like barely present here. The moments, like the snow globe room, are that nice holiday magic jolt that help a bit here. But this really does feel like a strange rehash of things done better in the first two movies. Dystopian Santa Claus North Pole, it's a nice message, with things and people being too materialistic. But we get that in the first movie. Also, if everyone else lost their memories, why did Tim Allen's character not? It feels like poor, I don't want to say choice, because it's not like he made the magic, the Jack Frost, but something feels strange there. But that makes you wonder, is that what happens to the Santa Claus when he actually dies, but with the memory loss part? That was the only thing I thought about when I saw that was, this sounds a little bit like my theory of what happens at the end of a previous Santa's tenure as the Claus. But not good, but it made me think about that. You know what is fun? Those little attention to details. Once again, the prop scenery people crushed it. The energy drink machine saying reindeer instead of Red Bull. I know that probably was a script person who came up with it, but those little attention to details are the things that make me very happy watching this movie at times. But you know what's not great? Clearly, no consequences about revealing that you're Santa and you don't lose your powers, and there's nothing crazy. It's more like guidelines. It's like the Pirates Code, right? From Pirates of the Caribbean is more like guidelines than actual rules. And like 10 people know that he's Santa, and they really threw Charlie out in this movie. Then they got rid of Bernard. Like seeing him at the end, he's in the dystopian thing for a bit. He's barely in the beginning, and he's at the end helping them fix their toy stuff. Like, if that's all he's in, he's not in this movie. He's barely a part. And they got rid of Bernard first, like not being in this at all. But the fact that they just decided to get rid of some of their characters for no real reason, bad, useless. You know what was great? And it puts into perspective how bad they are in the later two. We did see the OG reindeer in the flashbacks, the two of them fighting to be the new Santa again, Like, you saw the OG Rangers and you're like, wow, how great were they? And how bad did they make these? The other Legends of Holidays are thrown in a bit beginning and at the end, but that's not unlike the second movie as well. But they're nice to be here. It's having them included is great. I mean, I'm not saying they should do a spin-off because clearly we're past that time, but I think I maybe didn't like how they were barely a thing, but just kind of introduced immediately, and then they were once again there, but not really there. You know what was nice in this, though? There's a beginning moment where they teased kind of throughout the warm hugs thing as being a magical property. And guess what? When her parents get frozen, we know that the tease we saw, that's going to be the end-all be-all. And maybe you even knew that because the villain was Frost, and what, was going to thaw Frost and cold and stuff. I don't know, like warm hugs and all that stuff, right? It sounds nice. But overall, when you think of this movie, bad special effects, nice magical moments, interesting family dynamics, they're all lost into just so much of garbage jokes and, like, I know I've said this a lot, but really bad special effects. Like, things are flying all over the place, and at the end of the day, wow, 2 and 3 to a lesser degree have some nice moments. And look, the warm hugs thing is nice. I mean, I thought she was going to warm up her parents, but warming up Jack Frost, I guess, is the thing. I don't know. They could have gone in a slightly different direction, but it's fine, whatever they did. They wanted to redeem him for a nice reason of stuff, and that's fine. That's all great. But the thing is, you get all the stuff in the first movie, and if you skip 2 and 3, you don't miss out on a ton. The main issue here is they spend 90% of the time at the North Pole, and I thought about this, and I thought that probably is the reason why this is not necessarily doing it. You think it'd be more magical and more fun with most of it at the North Pole, but without the real world, the stakes of the family feel not nearly as important. And maybe it's because Charlie's not there, and somehow him being not even remotely and having no parents with him is good for his well-being and development. I don't know about that one. That seems a little far-fetched, I would say. We barely spend any time with non-Santa Scott Calvin, which feels like a missed opportunity because we had him, and there's a little bit of, Christmas past, Christmas present, Scrooge stuff in there, but it's barely addressed, and almost immediately he's right back at the North Pole trying to fix things. Just an average holiday movie that you don't really need to see unless you're binging every holiday movie you can find, but you're not diving into the contrived quantity over quality Hallmark holiday movies. I'm a bit more of a conflicted opinion on Home Alone, and before we get started, I like Home Alone. It's a great Christmas movie, and once against rolling, truly magical, festive fun, as only a 90s movie can deliver. But here's my take on things. Trying not to get too lost in the notion of it being a Christmas movie and rating it as the best Christmas movie, which I definitely feel like as I've looked at my letterbox, it's tiers and things compared to themselves, not to movies as a whole. But I'm going to try to temper it here. The amazing moment in the beginning. This movie is sensational about showing the chaos of existing through the holidays with a big family, something we all miss these days. And the airport scene on top of it, it might be unrealistic, but man, is it amazing. And Joe Pesci, the Goodfellas legend, is sensational here. And the whole thing about him being dressed as a cop to see who would be here or not, I definitely didn't realize that was the same person as a kid. I probably just thought that was a cop, and that was it. But it's pretty smart. I don't know. I love his character and their parts in this movie of the two wet bandits. Maybe even more than anyone else, Macaulay Culkin included. I feel like this is one of those movies you watch it at different points in your life, and you root for / are annoyed by different characters at different times. When I was a kid, I was super not about the family at all. I thought they treated Kevin like crap, and I 110% was on his side. But watching it now, yeah, a ton of his family and extended family members are jerks, but he is pretty terrible too. He might be the worst one of the litter. He is super ungrateful and rude to his mom. He talks back and is a little jerk, just like his uncle calls him. But nobody defends him either. I guess chalk this all up to just family holiday drama, which once again is a pretty strong depiction of it that is realistic enough here. The fake movie, Angels with Filthy Souls. 1, 2, keep the change, you filthy animal. And all of that is amazing. And this really should make like an amazing movie out of these. And there's 2. There's a sequel to this one in the later movie. So if they even made one Angels with Filthy Souls movie, I'd watch it. I'd be 100% down for that. So when Kevin is home alone, the stuff he does around the house, the garbage he eats, something every kid dreams about of being home alone. In this movie, it's at its best here, since you do root for him, since he's not fighting with his family. Whoever you think you root from the beginning, you are pretty quickly rooting for Kevin. The beginning is always just a bit off in tone with rooting against everyone, and maybe it's just saying everyone's kind of not amazing during the holidays. Maybe this is just me and my older viewing of it. You know what will always be bad about this movie? A dang spider. You guys know I don't like my spiders as big as houses, but I don't like focus on spiders either. At all. Definitely this pet one, awful. I don't trust anyone who has a pet spider. I don't get it. Awful. There are some really great moments after this, though, with Kevin trying to navigate the outside world to get a toothbrush. The phrase just wet bandits as a whole. And for me, the best part of the movie has to be all the setup of the moving mannequins and him pulling the moving strings and Jordan MJ, the goat, being pulled on the train, immediately following him by using the movie audio to get by pizza. I mean, he's a little genius. He's a little freak, but he's a little genius at this stuff. You know, one of my big issues with this movie? How come the cop who comes to check on him, like very early in the film, never announces who he is or any of that stuff? He just knocks on the door and that's it. And if it's the mom who calls and says her kid's home alone and there's a knock at the door and it's just a knock, I mean, like they just assume there's no kid there and that's it. Like, whew, there's some serious flaws in that sequence of events that don't really check out in my book. And lo and behold, that's where we end up. You feel like Kevin could have been talked to and helped by the police and problem solved to a degree. You could have said, well, maybe he was going to mistrust the police with fake Officer Joe Pesci, who was teased early on, but he didn't really know the whole gist there. And that never would have come to be if this were in the movie. The cop would have announced himself, that he would have talked through and everything would have got solved. But Kevin's a problem solver. He doesn't want to need anybody. I'm sure that whole thing of, not needing his family. He doesn't need anyone. He can figure it all out. So maybe there's some of that. Maybe there's just some kid fear. I mean, at the end of the day, he's supposed to be 8 years old. So pretty clever 8-year-old, all things considered. But look at me nitpicking over here. This is a great Christmas movie. It just has some logic flaws, since there is clearly no magic in this world, even though Kevin is led to believe that he wishes away his family twice. We as a viewership know that these are all just sequence of events things. The magic in this world isn't of a supernatural, occult way. So it's just what it is. And you can't ignore logic jumps in that kind of world. You can't just chalk it up to holiday magic. And maybe that's why I don't necessarily love this movie as much as some of the other festive films, is that magic is less obvious or in your face about it, I guess. You know what I do love? Watching Kevin navigate adult life, going shopping, doing your laundry. For being a seemingly helpless, 8-year-old, he walks a ton, he's getting great cardio in, does his best adulting he can for his age. And is he great defending his home? Yeah, that's the best part. That's where the phrase "he home alone" to me came from, right? In The Night Before Christmas. Yeah, he makes a mess of some stuff, but that's to be expected. At the end of the day, he's an 8-year-old kid. He's doing the best he can. And the final setup and defending his house with ice and the BB gun and the fire on the handle and the paint cans. Like, the slapstick humor works here as it's way more fun and almost grounded, I use that very loosely, than some of the garbage in Santa Claus 2 and 3. And as an extension of the Sonoma Macaulay Home Alone movies, there are 3 more after the 2 good ones. Some are unrelated, some are a different cast with the same character names, and some are just bad. Well, all of them. Malcolm McDowell is in the 5th one, surprisingly. They are making a 6th one. Finally going to have Culkin back after a 3-film absence and a hiatus. But I don't want to hold my breath with how many bad ones existed before. But with all those Disney Plus announcements from Investors Day, hopefully this, the latest Mighty Ducks, Hocus Pocus 2, can all be good returns and continuations of their franchise, and a start for the Hocus Pocus franchise of being more than just a one-off film. Also, one of the best parts has to be the surprisingly deep and emotional story with Marley, Kevin's misunderstood neighbor who is rumored to be a bad person, dumb kid's tall tales. But the story is so amazing and beautiful. It's not the main part of the movie, and it wasn't even initially in the script until the end of development, but it adds a deeper layer and something of a sounding board or someone for Kevin to have a bit of a reflection, and he also helps someone else out. So for all the negatives we may feel of Kevin being a little bratty and spoiled, in both these movies he really helps out the first 2, someone in need, and learns a thing along the way, which is once again one of those nice little Christmas movie things that happens seemingly in all of the big movies. As far as cameos go, John Candy as the polka guy, amazing. Brief, but amazing. And like I said, the good morals here cannot be missed. Think a more grounded Scrooge thing of Kevin understanding how much he misses his family. He learns and grows for the true meaning of Christmas, which is very important and a keystone to any good holiday movie. At the end of the day, there's good festive dressings, really fun, kooky 90s fun, and a really important moral that makes you smile and or tear up a little bit. I didn't mean to be so hard when I'm thinking about all I said. I don't think it was too hard, but I was a little hard in this movie to start. In the franchise in general. But in short, very good for a holiday movie. I don't think it'll ever be Elf or Santa Claus, but it probably is a bit better than the Grinch live action movie, which is once again also a nice discovery for something that's pretty good for me. Home Alone 2, this time in New York City. There's always something a bit nervous about rehashing the same story beats, especially with the Santa Claus movies did not do so well sequel-wise. Also, the craziest part here is the same with the first one. Early on in these movies, everyone gangs up on Kevin and makes fun of him, and I mean everyone. Like an entire auditorium of folks who would no way do that today. Especially not just how things are. You feel like someone would have stopped something. Especially you'd think it's the season. Not every single person in the auditorium is going to be a jerk, and someone should try to stop some bullying from happening on a public setting. It's kind of wild that the same issues as before is once again here. A rushed wake-up call. Kind of funny that they almost leave him. They do end up bringing him to the airport at least. He made it this time. But what are the chances they leave him again in a slightly different way? In this case, though, totally Kevin's fault. He is like that kid in the beginning of Quiet Place who's way too excited for batteries and such. You know what the crazy thing about that is? The message kind of undermines the first one. Kevin is still kind of terrible. He's still mad over his family, and it feels like he didn't learn anything from the first one. Yeah, his parents should have found a way to keep track of him better at the airport. Obviously. Especially with the incident from the first one. When they get to New York, it's a fun enough setting to get lost in and play around. Pigeon Lady is a quality side character, but even now you can see some very similar trends and repetitive story hits. At least the Wet Bandits, now Sticky Bandits, are back. Maybe it's the growing up, but Home Alone happens all the time as an adult. Heck, I'm going to be home alone for Christmas. The hotel, solo room, service, galore fantasy, that's something I've not experienced. That's something I can get behind. And we know we're going to get another Angels with Filthy Souls, but Angels with even filthier souls? First off, Amazing sequel name. That's the kind of thing we really need to see. Merry Christmas, you filthy animal. And keep the change. And Happy New Year. Like, all these things. Beautiful writing for a fake mob holiday movie. And we may never get to see it. But if this ever does become a movie and a movie franchise, I'm not going to say it would be, but it could be the greatest Christmas movie and movies of all time. Tim Curry is a great third minor villain, or just wondering why Kevin can afford a hotel where his parents are. But he is amazing in everything. Everything. I will say, and Clue. He's also amazing in Clue. I will say, way better than the time Jason took a quick detour to New York. No matter what, these first two movies really do get you in the festive holiday spirit. I am watching these with all the snow outside. It's just, if you feel more seasonal. I mean, after I do this, I'm going to hopefully get some Oreo candy canes at Big Y or Target. The best kind of candy canes if you're ever looking for something to mix up the peppermints and to spice up the season a little bit. Really in the season feel now. The toy store owner, played by Eddie Brackenstein, when you have these moments and it shows Kevin at his kindest and best, and it really makes you feel some kind of way. It makes you smile, and it just gives you that really warm feeling that only the best holiday movies can do. But besides that, the moments of his ingenuity are on full display here too. Taking fake jewelry as another trip hazard to substitute for marbles, his puppetry as people skills will always be amazing. Like, that's, if he's not going to go into like some crazy scary job function, if he just wanted to be like a puppet guy, he'd crush it as an animatronic puppet guy. Like, for being a kid who is mad rude to his parents at times, he is super amazing at navigating life, and you have to root for him in these moments. Pigeon Lady, maybe a hot take, has nothing on Mitch, but Judgy Kevin takes a bit to remember his lessons from the first movie, but the good news is, he does eventually realize, he misses his family and all the Christmas fun. He realizes not to judge, but he does have this wild way of straight up yelling in people's faces when he meets someone that he is initially scared of. And look, he's like an 8-year-old, 9-year-old kid at this point. I think 9-year-old, I'm assuming it's 1 year later. Strangers may be scary, but eventually he grows out of this a little bit. Running away from people, not trusting people who you think could never love you. Like, these are those deep story beats of Pigeon Lady, and they're way too real for me during single, solo, lonely Christmas. Damn, Home Alone 2. You had me feeling feelings when I was watching this. It's wild that the kind of flawed Kevin can help someone again, helping these people who really need it during the holiday season, and hearing his stuff, it's not like they really help him, but he kind of helps himself learning from their stories, if that makes sense. It's kind of how I get it. I feel like he helps them with long trauma, and they help him kind of realize how good he has it to a degree. They always help him get in the holiday season. He helps them get in the holiday season, and they always find a way to change his childish impotence to somehow inspire in him the greater good. And here, his whole elaborate traps thing, first it was just to protect himself. Now it's to save money for being stolen that's going to the children's hospital's Christmas. These movies really are better than I remember, both of them. And of course, him defending the toy place, or more so, his uncle's renovated place. Beautiful. Like, you wonder if these wet bandits, now the sticky bandits, are like dead 20 times over after what Kevin does to them. And his aim is amazing. Sharpshooter Kevin with the bricks here. This whole movie. But this part specifically plays with some of the trap gags, but finds a new fun way to make these unique enough. But they're nice callbacks to the original. This little Saw Jigsaw kid is the devil. Even the end, when you think the sticky bandits have won and Kevin slips on ice for a change of pace, nothing can beat them than getting the birds did treatment. If you were scared of this movie, the end of this will not be kind to you. Well, the end of the fight. The end is a beautiful, mushy end that is perfect of Kevin and his family being treated to some lovely kindness because of what Kevin did first. There's the nice big tree in New York City, and that's how his mom finds him because he loves trees and the Christmas season as a whole. Roundabout, good story. These two Home Alones definitely better than I gave them credit for. And I thought highly of them, just not as highly as others, but I think these are both have to be part of the yearly seasonal canon. Santa Claus is Coming to Town, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, and Frosty the Snowman. These are some of the classics when you think of these movies. I figured they're similar enough in nature, throw them up together with a quick point on all three, leave it at that. Most people have seen these at some point, unless you're very young and hopefully your parents have introduced you to these movies at some point. You don't have to watch them all the time, but hopefully you're introduced to them. None of these are crazy involved and fleshed out and deep, like the original Grinch TV special. These movies, TV specials, however you want to call them, come in at 48, 47, and 25 minutes respectively. They're really fun, brief, festive specials, classics in their own right. I feel like not everyone knows as much about Santa Claus is Coming to Town with the Burgermeister Meister Burger, amazing name, and the Winter Wizard. And it's just a very different style of animation than the other two. It kind of reminded me, not even kind of, it super reminded me of Team America World Police Force. These are nice and fun movies, which is why my calendar graphic on how to watch the Freeform 25 Days of Christmas Marathon only has you watching them when you can do the triple feature marathon, which is way shorter compared to some movies these days. Look, 4-hour Justice League eventuality, he's got nothing on that. These are fun, will get you in the spirit, and are classics. Yes, I wish the OG Grinch would be included with these 60s and early 70s bite-sized bursts of Christmas fun, especially because they had the other two Grinch movies in this at some point. You think they could have gotten that one as well. I don't think I could just watch one of these and be satisfied. That to me is the one pitfall. Remember, these are all great in their own right, but if I want to just sit down and watch something, these may not be enough. For me, I like to watch a full holiday movie, sometimes more when I'm trying to binge watch to get through this episode, and that is something I will get into a bit more with the next episode about the modern holiday classics. Yes, some of these will be on there. Probably you can guess only one of the Santa Claus movies will make it. But in short, not unlike these, nice and fun. I don't think they have to be yearly viewing, but once every few years when you're feeling nostalgic or want to introduce someone who has never seen them, do your civic duty, show these Christmas classics off, and educate these young peoples. Class is in session this winter break. Look, we've talked about Nightmare Before Christmas a few times this season on this podcast, so might as well do a brief one here. More importantly, let's decide once and for all. Is this a Christmas movie, a Halloween movie, or both? It's both. It's both. If not, here's my rationale if you disagree. If you can watch this both seasons, once in Halloween, once in Christmas, you should. You may not think this movie is a Christmas movie. You may say it's a Halloween movie with Christmas elements. You can't argue. What's This is a Christmas song. Has to be on the Holiday Hits playlist and will fit right in. It's not exactly a Christmas movie in feel, but the Christmas story beats and scenes, the Christmas crisis of haunted holiday presents, there are moments that hit on both seasons. Some say you have too many Christmas movies that are family friendly and not of Halloween movies, so keep it as a Halloween movie. But this movie is good enough for both seasons, as I said. Watch it twice. You don't have to watch November. Take a month off and pick it right back up after you're done with your Thanksgiving and your canned cranberry sauce and turkey and all that stuff, and watch it again in the Christmas December season. So I've only seen bits of some of these movies. Dr. Seuss's The Grinch, the 2018 one, this is the first time I've ever seen this movie. Never before. This is my first reaction to this movie. I loved the original, and the 2000 Jim Carrey one was way more appreciated this time around and has really grown on me. With animation, you can do a ton, but it really makes you realize how amazing the set design and costumes were in the live action one. Also, Benedict Cumberbatch, amazing in Sherlock, Doctor Strange, and more, but this kind of American Southernish voice, not super doing it for me. I'll tell you, I swore that this was Bill Hader. Not when I listened to it, but I thought advertising-wise, I was like, it's Bill Hader. And someone told me, what do you mean? And they had to correct me that it was Benedict Cumberbatch. And I felt very cinematically incompetent when I had that thought. So thankfully I was corrected in my error. But not that it was awful Benedict Cumberbatch in this, but it was missing something for me. You know what was doing it for me though? All the Tyler the Creator music on this soundtrack. Surprising and amazing at the same time. Not unlike a Busta Rhymes Christmas song from the first movie, or that amazing Snoop Dogg Anna Kendrick Pitch Perfect song in the second movie, I think. I do appreciate that people don't just hate the Grinch for being different here, but the emotional stakes are definitely not there as much on this one. The self-hatred and some slightly mature themes are here, but more so than the live-action one. Yes, I'm going to compare these. You have to. They're all Grinch movies. This is just a bit more of a kid's movie. Maybe take baby steps to get up to the live-action one with your kids, The original you can always show as a classic, just to get it out there. You show this one, preferably not too together, because they're very similar in plot, where the 2000 Grinch took a little more of a risk and adventure with some of the plot points and adding some new lore to things. But baby steps to get up to the 2000 Grinch. This is great for kids, obviously. Also, just want to throw this out there. Kenan Thompson has the happiest Who in this movie. I didn't think of it at the time, but he's phenomenal. He's a delightful breath of fresh air and great part to the movie. Not a really important part, but just a great one-off thing that you see him a few times here and there. That's very exciting. Well, it took a little bit to get to the trauma and psychology, which are staples of the Grinch storyline, obviously. But this one does have an interesting angle. While I liked having the Who people not being just these perfect folks, the mayor being mad corrupt, here they go the route of, he had a really bad childhood experience of never being loved and experiencing the season. And as an adult, those same feelings come up almost in a PTSD kind of way when he is experiencing it in full blast. He's not ready for those feelings and processing those things. Is it bad that I just relate to all these depressing plot lines in Christmas movies and Big Mouth these days? Maybe, but it is what it is. Look, we all know this movie was made for kids, and the humor, and specifically the Cindy Lou Who storyline, very much went that route. Not bad, but I'm clearly not the main audience for this. But I can still watch this and enjoy parts. Happy I watched it, but I don't need to watch this version every year. I think that's for sure. But how bad could a movie be if it has the Christmas classic by Run DMC, Christmas in Hollis? I'm not sure it's the best Christmas song ever. That probably is still that Mariah Carey one. But this song is gotta be in the top 5 Christmas classics of all time. Has to be, no question. The modern take on things here, it's nice, it's different. Cindy Lou Who's mom is a single mother, and all she wants for Christmas is her mom to, have some help, not feel as overworked, and just help out her mom, which is very nice. It once again challenges the materialistic nature of people without maybe being as obvious with it as the live action one. I do like the live action one very much. But if you think of this as a similar but alternate storyline, also very nice how they did it. But I kind of like what they did with the Grinch, a little more understated, worn down, through the years of abandonment. Clearly more developed than the old TV one. But there's just something missing that the Jim Carrey one has. I don't know if I would have said this before this year, but besides that song, the classic You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch, which is not good in either of these movies. The original song is a classic, the best that could ever be, like no one ever was. Bum, bum, bum. You have to use that song in that version. It's the best. Anything else is just not that. I don't even know and I love the CeeLo Green Christmas album with all my heart. Even that song, that version may not exactly do it for me as much as every other song on that album. But as far as the whole movie goes, taking out music for a second, the live action one is the best of these. Will have to be a part of my yearly watch party from now on. But this is not a bad movie. Clearly better as a family movie more than a single sad guy movie. This may be me laying it on a bit thick. Hopefully part 2 of Christmas movies, I'll be in a bit of a jollier mood. But like they allude to, we can all be happy even if it's, tough to feel or accept that it is possible. but damn, the end movie really gets you in a nice understated way. When he's invited to, a family dinner at a bit of a smaller gathering than the entire town, which always felt a little ridiculous in the book to begin with. This is actually a really nice movie. My tone is changing rapidly here in this stream of conscious style of taking notes and reflecting that I was doing when I watched it for the first time. Not bad, not live action Jim Carrey though. So coming down from the emotional high that I was on when I watched these, The Night Before is probably the only movie on this list clearly as an adult Christmas movie, and of the Freeform marathon, the only thing like it. The Night Before and the amazing narration of Tracy Morgan, who apparently is Santa Claus in the end. Something about the rhyming to drinkings and drug and debauchery, amazing. Three friends played by Anthony Mackie, Seth Rogen, and Joseph Gordon-Levitt. They all have amazing chemistry together and are brought together in the story by a tragedy and this lovely tradition of just getting trashed and messed up came to be. But the white whale of this story is the party, the Nutcracker Ball, something that is supposed to be this amazing bomb party, and this is the year that they finally have tickets. They're going their separate ways, and surprise, surprise, they find these tickets the last possible case, and they made it all happen. But this is just a fun movie, from playing Runaway on a toy store floor keyboard, the Red Bull sponsorships, and the Red Bull limo. There's just amazing, fun, weird, quirky details that you have to love. The supporting cast is great here too, with Jason Mantzoukas, Michael Shannon, the sketchy drug dealer who may low-key steal the movie for me, James Franco, and Miley Cyrus, and so many more. Any movie with Seth Rogen is going to involve him doing drugs. Also, Mindy Kaling's in this, by the way. That's also amazing. I feel like I'm just name-dropping like crazy the actors and actresses a part of this movie. This group of friends, though, that when we get past all the flash and glitter of all the names, right? At the end of the day, this movie is a nice story about three friends come together through tragedy. They have this lovely tradition, but, everyone's going through things in their life and they're growing apart as they all go on their own journeys of their lives. And they all have something to deal with here. Gosh, I love my movies with their trauma, apparently. I mean, look, this is, more emotionally charged holiday hangover, I would say. Not the feeling like the movie. Like Elf, it's so different than anything else out there. And it has some magical wonder, obviously. There is actual magic in this movie. There's some drug humor to be expected. And of course, people dealing with their hidden or public traumas. Having a kid, abandonment issues, or coming to the end of one part of your life. All these three friends are going through change in their life. And during this time of the year, change can feel even harder and more challenging to deal with. One thing I like here, it kind of promotes the magic of Christmas, which is good, but it also demystifies it a bit. The big moment is making you feel like a true love story, but quickly fighting those tropes by showing when it goes wrong and you just buy into the lore of the season. Like, people are all dealing with the shit in their lives, and when Joseph Gordon-Levitt makes a spectacle of love and it ends because he gets into the season and does too much when it's not based in logic. Maybe it's because of Joseph Gordon-Levitt being in the somewhat similar-ish stance on romance in 500 Days of Summer vibes, but somehow it's less depressing. I don't know, because you'd think it'd be more depressing in the season, but also the end wraps it up in a way that I don't know how much I buy, being a pragmatic realist here, but it's a nice way to end it. At the end of the day, this is a really nice story which has the feel of a Christmas classic love story, but it's a stoner comedy and, more importantly, a friendship story. So you can watch it when you're not necessarily in the mood for a everything is going to be right just because it is the season movie, but still have that, mad festive dose that you need of an adrenaline shot. My Letterboxd score may not be too high right now, but it could definitely change. And I may have to buy this on DVD for like $4 on Amazon right now. Who knows? And yes, Michael Shannon, looking back, definitely steals a spotlight as a drug dealing, big party hosting Jay Gatsby. He's the father Christmas figure we need in this story, simply amazing. And of course he's an angel in the end because he's an angel in general. Happy that this was the last movie I watched to round out the list. And this is one you can still catch on Freeform. I know my list came out a little late. Still catch it on Freeform, December 22nd, 9:20. I'm sure there's going to be some stuff edited out, but amazing movie, and do yourself a favor. And if you want something a little, exclusively made for adults, check it out. So omissions here. What do we got? The original Grinch TV show version needs to be lumped in with the rest of the animated classics. If you have two Grinches, you might as well get the trifecta. Also, if you're putting together all the animated classics, you gotta include Grandma Got Run Over by a Reindeer from 2000. The animated film is fun, very different from everything else. Santa's in a legal battle, corporate takeovers, small businesses, the classic song, some holiday hijinks. If you haven't watched it yet, December 21st on the CW at 8 p.m. Eastern. Bring the whole family. You will not regret it. Obviously, the big one here is Elf, but we will surely be talking about that next episode for modern holiday classics. The big one I want to talk about, at least the early Harry Potter films. The ones that show snow like 1 to 4. I was going to say that was it, just the early ones only, but a list that I just saw on Screen Rant says the top 10 best Christmas scenes and references in all of the Harry Potter movies, and it's not just focused on the early ones. There's snow and things throughout. So maybe just a franchise marathon could easily take up a 3-night weekend marathon next year. Not want to jump the gun, but a nice Friday to Sunday of Harry Potter doses of movies could be a nice way to make things happen. But we'll talk a little bit more about that in the next episode as well. Well, it took a while, but episode 20, that is right, 20 episodes, and they're now out and available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, and just this weekend, now available on Pandora. So many more places as well. Thanks to Buzzsprout, as usual, the host, for making it all possible. In case y'all haven't been able to tell, the holiday season, it's been a bit rough. But really, 2020 as a whole has been kind of a crap year. So yeah, it took some time to get to the holiday episode. Even recording and editing has taken a little bit of a toll on me. Just a little bit. And another one of these is on the way next week. It will hopefully be Wednesday or Thursday. Not gonna lie, this weekend and week looks absolutely stuffed with game podcasts to do for work. But I will try to get this one out when I can. Heck, I know this one is coming out later than normal. So I will hope that one is less bummed out. No promises, just keeping things as real as can be. But yeah, if you want to talk or whatnot, on social, Knickknack Movies, Knickknack_IC. Let me know your favorite Christmas movie. Let's see if we can compare and contrast our favorites. And if you hate one, let me know. If you're a diehard fan of the Die Hard's, phenomenal. If you're a diehard fan of the later Home Alones, not as phenomenal. You'll get some surprises next week of what I consider a Christmas movie. I know Nick Rojas was very surprised about saying Batman Returns could be a Christmas movie, but that's one. Iron Man 3 is one. There's a whole laundry list of movies that can be considered Christmas movies if you really believe. And if you have a favorite movie that's part of the 25 days of Christmas marathon in Freeform, even better. Let's chit-chat about it. But before I go, I hope y'all are doing as well as can be during these crazy times. That can be, elation and jubilance, or it could be downright depressing and really hard. But I'm hoping that you guys are all doing as good as can be. And you specifically, who is listening to this, I hope you have a lovely closeout to 2020 and things will be better in 2021. That's all we can hope for, right? So that's it. And until next time, cinephiles. Are you not entertained? I think this is going to be the beginning of a beautiful friendship. I don't like goodbyes. Let's just call this see you later, alligator.